Hi everyone, it's Ms. Lembo from the Comac Public Library. I wanted to check in and see how everyone's doing. Wanted to let you know that I miss seeing the teens for our DIY nights, and I am working on doing a couple of videos for some DIY projects using materials that you most likely have at home. But while I'm doing that, I thought I would stop in and show you how to do another DIY. So I have been baking a lot now that I've been working from home, and I don't know if you have been to a grocery store lately, but it is a little difficult to find some ingredients that you might need when baking. So I have a chocolate cupcake recipe I'm going to share with you from scratch. So if you can't find any boxes of cupcake mix, this one's great. It also doesn't have any eggs or butter in it, in case you couldn't find those ingredients either. And there are a few substitutions that I can share with you so that maybe your pantry doesn't have some of the ingredients that mine does, but it's something that typically you might have the ingredients for. So this recipe asks for the oven to be preheated to 350, so we'll go ahead and do that. And then you will also want to line a cupcake tray with cupcake liners. And that way that prep work is out of the way for you. So I've gone ahead and I've put all the ingredients that I need here on my counter for this recipe. This way I know that I have everything before I've started mixing it. I'm going to share with you what everything is. This is a cup of milk. You can use any kind of milk. I'm using oat milk. It works with regular milk. I've used almond milk and soy milk before. This is a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. You can also use white vinegar. This is 1/3 cup of vegetable oil. Canola oil works fine. This is 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla, 3/4 cup of sugar, 1 cup of flour, 1/3 cup of cocoa powder, and this is a mixture of 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And those are all the ingredients that you're going to need. So the first thing that you're going to do in this recipe is take your milk, your 8 ounces of milk, pour it into a bowl, and then you're also going to add your teaspoon of vinegar. Then you're going to whisk them together. What we are doing right now is we're creating a buttermilk substitute. This is a non-dairy version to make buttermilk, and what this does for your baked goods is, because buttermilk is a little more acidic, we are adding acid to our milk, and this is going to help make a light, fluffy baked good instead of more of a dense cupcake. So we're going to mix that for a little bit, and then we're going to let that rest aside. After we've let that set aside for a little bit, what we're going to do is mix the rest of our wet ingredients in. So for us, that will be our oil, our vanilla, and our sugar. And I'm sure that you might be thinking, Ms. Lembo, sugar's not wet. And that is true. When you're making cupcakes, however, what you're doing is you're dissolving your sugar in the wet ingredients. To make a light cupcake, what you want is for less gluten production. And when you add a liquid to flour, what happens is gluten starts to form, which is what makes your bread so structured. And you can make a great sandwich with it, but that's not really what you want from a cupcake. So when you dissolve your sugar into your liquid, you're going to help that prohibit the gluten production. We're going to beat this until it starts to get a little foamy. And then, in a separate bowl, we're going to mix our dry ingredients. This one's pretty simple. Cocoa powder, flour, and your baking soda, baking powder, and salt mixture. That we're going to give a little mix together. And mix it up nice so that it's well incorporated. Now that we've done that, what we're going to do is take our dry ingredients and mix them into our wet ingredients in 2 separate batches. We're going to use a hand mixer for this. And we're going to beat this until there are no major lumps left. Slight little lumps are fine. So now that our batter is all incorporated, we're going to scoop that into our muffin tins that we have lined about 3/4 of the way full. If you have a little left in your bowl, you just go ahead and kind of evenly portion it out into the rest of your cupcakes. Make them as even as possible. Now this cupcake isn't going to be a rich, like punch you in the face kind of chocolate cupcake, and we're going to make a homemade frosting as well in a bit. That I'm going to do a plain buttercream frosting using what I had in my fridge. And I will tell you some variations you can make on that. So what we're going to do is now we're going to bake these for about 18 to 20 minutes until we're in the oven. We get to make our frosting. I'm going to make enough frosting to pipe my cupcakes. If you're just going to smear it on your cupcakes, you can go ahead and cut this recipe in half. Otherwise, you'll be left with a lot of frosting. So what I've got 2 sticks of butter. That's a cup of butter. This is unsalted. I've left it out on the counter pretty much all day, so it's nice and soft on its own. And you do want it to be room temperature. It just helps it beat better and incorporate nicely. The next thing you will need is a 1/4 cup of milk. This too should be room temperature. Otherwise, letting your butter soften was just gone to waste when you introduce something cold into the mix. You will also need confectioner's sugar, about 3½ cups, and vanilla. This isn't very exact. I use half a capful of vanilla in my frosting. And the variation on that one is you can use half vanilla and half a different extract. During the holiday season, I do half vanilla, half peppermint extract with my chocolate cupcakes, and that's always been a big hit at holiday parties. So I'm going to use my stand mixer. You can definitely do this with a hand mixer. If you have a stand mixer, definitely put your paddle attachment on. And you're going to cream your butter. So that just means taking your butter, putting it inside, locking it in place, and hitting go. So this you're going to do until it is nice and creamy. If you're going to do a non-dairy cupcake, use half margarine and half a vegetable-based shortening. The margarine flavor on its own can be a little overpowering. All right, so once it's nice and fluffy, it looks like that. We are going to add in sugar. So our powdered sugar for the whole recipe is about 3½ cups. We're going to do it a little at a time. The thing with frosting is a lot of it is to taste. All right, so this is 1 cup. Please listen to this advice. Start slow, otherwise you'll wind up with powdered sugar everywhere. Once it's incorporated a little bit more, you can go ahead and raise the speed on that. And then you will add another cup. And start that process again, starting at slow and going up. Now as it's beating, it's incorporating air into the mixture, which is what's making it very nice and fluffy. Once that's incorporated, you're going to go ahead and add your vanilla. This is a very scientific measurement. And as it's mixing, if you find that it's too firm, this is where you're going to slowly add your milk. And then before you say it's done, take a clean spoon and sample just a little bit. That's good. Don't put your sample spoon back in there. I'm just gonna beat it a little longer. And this is a fluffy buttercream. So you're going to take the cupcakes out when they're done. To check if they are done, you can take a knife or a toothpick and just push it into the center of one of the cupcakes. If it comes out without any wetness on it, then your cupcakes are done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to let these rest until they're completely cool. I know that it's difficult because the house smells like chocolate cupcakes and you have all that beautiful frosting. If the cupcakes are even just the slightest bit warm when you put the frosting on them, it's going to completely melt your frosting. When you see those pictures of Pinterest fails that were supposed to be Cookie Monster and what you've got instead is just a blob of blue frosting slipping off of a cupcake, that is because somebody didn't wait until their cupcakes were completely cool. So it's going to be difficult, but it will be well worth it in the end. All right, now that your cupcakes are nice and cool and you've removed them from the pan, we can go ahead and frost them. If you are going to smear your frosting on, go ahead, have at it. If you want to try a piping bag, I have some tips for that too. If you don't have a piping bag, you can just snip the tip off a Ziploc bag and that works pretty well. You'll get like a round design. If you do have piping bags and a tip, like I do, I've got my tip here and these nice reusable piping bags, but you don't very often use them because it's hard to get the frosting into them. Here's a little tip I picked up. Take a tall reusable glass, put it in like that, and then fold the top over. So what you've done is you've essentially given yourself an extra set of hands. And then we are going to scoop our frosting into our piping bag. Now you just pull the sides up and you've got your frosting loaded. We're going to give it a little twist on the top and gently nudge it down to the bottom. Squeeze it to make sure there's no air bubbles because that'll give your arms a workout. And there you go. These are two techniques I know to frost a cupcake. You can do the standard swirl, in which you will start at the outside and work your way in. When you get to the top, you're going to release the pressure and pull up. The other one I know is a reverse of that. So you take your cupcake and you start at the center and work your way out. All right. Release your pressure and you've got a little rose. I just did all 12 of my cupcakes and I still have some left. So if you were going to smear your frosting, definitely cut that recipe in half. It's easy enough to half. All right.